We are joined now by White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre. Good to have you on with us this morning, and a really important morning to do so, Karine. Given the announcement by Vladimir Putin, the escalation, the threats, even threats of going nuclear, saying this is not a bluff, does that change at all President Biden's address to the UN General Assembly that's just hours from now?
So, Mika, thank you so much for having me. I don't want to get ahead of what the president will say later this morning around the 10 o'clock hour at the United General Assembly in just a few hours. But I'll say this. Russia talks about being threatened. And the only country that's being threatened is Ukraine. The only country that has been invaded is Ukraine. And what we're seeing now is what Russia is trying to do is they're trying to take territory away from Ukraine by using these sham referenda. This is something that, Mika, that we have been warning about. And to your point, they are doing this just ahead of leaders coming together for UNGA. And it is an affront to the UN charters. It is an affront to the UN principles. If you think about what they're trying to do, it is illegitimate as well. And it's all because Russia is losing ground on the battlefield. But what we are going to continue to do, and you will hear this from the president, and he's been consistent on this, is we're going to continue bring the country together with his leadership and continue to support Ukraine as they are fighting for their freedom. And we've seen their bravery of the last 6 months, and we're going to make sure that they have everything that they need to strengthen their hand on the battlefield as they move forward.
So, Karine, the overnight message from Vladimir Putin had a number of parts to it. You mentioned the referendums there for the territorial expansion, the mobilization of potentially 300,000 reservists, and also his first threat in a while about nuclear weapons. And there is a fear that if that territory does become, quote, part of Russia due to the sham referendum, any sort of attack there could be used as a pretense to use, therefore, nuclear weapons. So what is the United States' message on simply that to Vladimir Putin about using those weapons of mass destruction?
So the president has been really clear. He spoke to this on 60 Minutes just a couple of days ago, and he was asked this very question. And so he had said the consequences would be dangerous. But, you know, I'm not going to indulge Russia in the saber rattling. The president has been very clear about this. But again, like the president said, it would be very dangerous.
And staying overseas, the president talked about the United States' policy towards Taiwan. Can you clear up for us? We've heard sort of different statements from him versus others in the administration. Has the U.S. policy on Taiwan changed?
So the president was very clear. Even in that interview, he said that has not changed. The one China policy has not changed as it's guided by the Taiwan Relations Act. It stays the same. He was very clear when he was asked about this in Tokyo. He's been very consistent. We had the National Security Advisor, as you know, in the briefing room yesterday, Jake Sullivan, and he also iterated the same.
Karine, the president also in the 60 Minutes interview said that the pandemic is over. There's been quite a bit of pushback to that statement by the president. Where is he today on that? So
just to step back for a second, what we saw during that interview, 60-minute interview, when he made those comments, he was walking through the Detroit car show, the halls of the Detroit car show, and he was looking around. We have to remember the last time that they had held that event was 3 years ago. Even as we're talking about UNGA, the president's going to speak shortly, as I just mentioned, that hasn't been held in person for about 3 years as well. So we are in a different time. He's been very consistent about that. And the reason why is because we are now prepared. We are now ready. We know how to deal with this pandemic. It is now more manageable. It's not as disruptive as it's been in the prior years. And it is because of what this president has done on day one. If you think about where we were when he walked in, 3,000 people were dying a day. That has come down 90%. You think about schools were closed, now schools are open. Think about businesses were closed, now businesses are open. And it's because of the work that this administration has done. Now, what he has been very consistent about is that we have to continue to have a front foot on this, so we have the funding so that we are ahead of this, of any other, as we look at future vaccines and future treatments, we need to make sure that we are ready for that, as we're also leading, as we're talking the backtrack of UNGA, as we're leading globally as well.
So staying with the theme of the president's interview the other night, he also said, I'm going to read this to you, who's asked about inflation, and he downplayed the change to the 8.3, went from 8.2 to 8.3. He suggested that too much was being made of that. Senate Minority Leader McConnell responded in kind the next day and said that the president might want to talk to Americans who are trying to survive under his policies before he sits down next TV interview, suggesting the president is out of touch with that cost by trying to downplay that number. Does the president understand how difficult inflation is for so many Americans? Why would he say what he did the other night?
So the president, anytime he talks about the economy, he mentions how he understands how hard it is for American people who are sitting around, American families who are sitting around their kitchen table and trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills every month. That is why we have done the work that we have on gas prices. Every day this summer, gas prices has gone down because of the historic actions that this president took. It's gone down by more than $1.30 per gallon. And again, we understand how people are feeling. That's why, if you think about the Inflation Reduction Act, which, by the way, no Republican voted for, only Democrats voted for, which is part of the president's economic plan, that is going to lower costs on health care. That's going to lower cost on prescription drugs for our seniors who are paying thousands of dollars a month. Now it's going to be capped at $2,000. That is going to lower costs on energy if you think about what people are paying on energy. And as you know, Jonathan, because you follow the White House very closely, it is a historic amount that's going to truly fight climate change, right? As the president's about to speak to the assembly, we are leading as a country on the climate crisis, on the work that we have done because of the historic investments that we have made in this country. Again, part of the president's economic plan, you think about the bipartisan infrastructure legislation, you think about the American Rescue Plan, which has gotten us back where our economy is stronger than it's been in modern times. Yes, there's still a lot of work to do, but the president has always been very clear. We are never going to leave anybody behind. His economic plan is about lifting it from the bottom up, the middle out, and it has equity at the center so that we give people a little bit more of a breathing room.